Ahoj, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. Today you are going to learn some new phrases starting with the prefix po. Last week I talked about 3 different functions of this verb prefix. I also mentioned that we can have this prefix back to back. We can have a verb such as popovídat si, to sit down and chat and have a nice time. So let's continue with this topic. It is quite common to have a Czech verb starting with po, because this particular prefix can make an imperfective verb perfective without changing its meaning. Let me tell you what I mean exactly. These are perfective verbs. They talk about a finished action. And these are imperfective verbs. They talk about something that's ongoing and it's not finished. Let's look at this first verb, zvát, to invite. So when I say zvu tě, it means I'm inviting you. Zvu tě na oběd. Zvu tě na kávu. I'm inviting you for lunch. I'm inviting you for coffee right now. Or repeatedly. Každé pondělí tě zvu na kávu. Every Monday I invite you to a coffee. And if you want to say that someone invited you, you would use pozvat. When you add po in front of this verb and get rid of this accent, it becomes perfective. It means the action is finished and you cannot use this verb for present tense. You cannot say that right now. When you say pozvu tě, it means I will invite you, not I am inviting you. So it can refer to the future. Pozvu tě, I will invite you. Pozval jsem tě, pozvala jsem tě. I invited you. Pozvali mě na oběd. They invited me to lunch. Pozvali mě na oběd. Remember, the meaning doesn't change. They both mean to invite, but they refer to different tenses. If you would like to learn more about the topic of perfective and imperfective verbs, I made a video about this some time ago. You can check out the link below or also click here. Let's see another common verb, prosit, which you know from prosím. When you say prosím in Czech, it means please. One of the meanings is please. But prosit means to ask someone. This is the imperfective form. Prosím, I'm asking. A poprosím means I will ask. This means to ask someone for a favor usually, or ask someone for a thing, like ask someone for a napkin. Very informally. Můžu tě o něco poprosit? Can I ask you something? Can I ask you for a favor? Můžu tě o něco poprosit? When you make sentences with these 2 verbs, it's good to keep in mind the construct of the sentence. Můžu tě, that's the accusative case, o něco poprosit. So when you ask someone, that's the accusative case. For something, that's the preposition o, and the accusative case as well. Můžu tě o něco poprosit? Imagine you want to ask a waiter for one more fork and you would say, můžu vás poprosit o ještě jednu vidličku? Můžu vás poprosit o ještě jednu vidličku? Of course, the word order changed a little bit because we started by the verb můžu. So the object, můžu vás, goes in front of this main verb. Next one is požádat and žádat. This is kind of similar, but it is more formal, definitely. Žádat means to ask formally, to request something, also to apply for something. Požádat is the perfective form. Žádám o práci, I am applying for a job. Požádal jsem o práci, I applied for a job. It's done. And you might have heard me saying o as well. Požádat o práci. And if you wanted to say that you ask someone, that would be the accusative case as well. Požádal jsem ji o pomoc. I asked her for help. Požádal jsem ji o pomoc. So whenever you ask for something officially or more formally, you can use this verb. You heard me saying požádal jsem ji o pomoc. That is interchangeable with this one. You could also say poprosil jsem ji o pomoc. However, this one is much more formal. When we speak, we probably wouldn't use this as much as this one, meaning asking someone a favor or asking someone for something. But if you want to say that you applied for a job, you could use požádat. Požádal jsem o práci. Požádal jsem o české občanství. I applied for a Czech citizenship. Požádal jsem o české občanství. Now let's take a look at the last verb. Radit is to give advice. Poradit is the perfective version. With these verbs, we are focusing on the result, that something will be done or was done. And these verbs are focusing on the process. Or when we talk about circumstance, that something is happening because of something else. Let's see this sentence. Poradíš mi, prosím tě? Poradíš mi? This means, will you advise me, literally? But we would just say, will you help me? Will you help me by advising me? Poradíš mi? You can add something more. Poradíš mi, co mám odpovědět? Will you help me what to answer? Poradíš mi, co mám odpovědět? And of course, there are more verbs that have the prefix po and they just mean that they are perfective. If you would like to practice more verbs that start with po and fall exactly into this category, you can also check out my worksheet that I prepared for you. You will also find a link to download this worksheet below the video. Po in front of the verb can also mean that we spread something evenly on the surface. For example, these verbs posolit a popepřit, they are related to cooking, to seasoning. Posolit comes from solit, which means to salt something, to add salt. Popepřit comes from pepper, to season with pepper. And these are their perfective variants. Imagine you're reading a recipe about making buns, and towards the end of the recipe they say salt and pepper the buns. Bochánky. Posolíme a popepříme. Bochánky posolíme a popepříme. So po is spreading something evenly on the surface. Imagine you are putting the salt so that it's even, as well as the pepper. We could also have pocukrovat if it was a different recipe, to put sugar on top of it. Now let's take a look at this verb, polít or polít se. This means to spill or spread liquid. Usually we use it with this se part, with the reflexive part. Polít se, it means to spill liquid on yourself. Polila jsem se čajem. I spilled tea all over me. Polila jsem se čajem. If you grew up in a Czech environment, you might have heard your parents or grandparents say, prosím tě, nepolij se. Nepolij se. Don't spill it on yourself. The prefix po can also mean that something will take some time or took some time. These are imperfective verbs and these are perfective. From čekat, to wait, there is a verb počkat, which is perfective. Počkám na tebe v parku. I'll wait for you in the park. Počkám na tebe v parku. Počkám na tebe will be translated as I'll wait for you versus budu na tebe čekat v parku means I will be waiting for you in the park. You're emphasizing that you will be there waiting sometime. But if you choose this perfective verb, it also means sometime, but you're focusing on the result, that you will find me in the park. I'll wait for you there. Počkám na tebe v parku. I would like to add a few examples here. Usually when we mention how long we should be waiting, it's related to some short amount of time, we prefer to say počkat. For example, počkáš na mě 5 minut, will you wait for me 5 minutes? Instead of saying, budeš na mě čekat 5 minut. Also, you wouldn't say this in English. You would not say, will you be waiting for me 5 minutes? That sounds like you are a bit surprised, maybe. Chvíli na tebe počkám is what we would prefer instead of saying, chvíli na tebe budu čekat. This version sounds like, I will be waiting for you a bit, but then I might leave. Chvíli na tebe počkám also sounds more friendly. Also remember, when you have imperative form, it's also nicer to say počkej. Počkej tady prosím instead of čekej tady prosím. Čekej is used mostly for a dog, čekej, or very, very informally, like čekej, čekej. So remember, it's always better to use počkej or počkejte for the vy person. It is similar with these two verbs as well. Trvat means to take, as in duration. Potrvat is to take some time in the future or in the past. So when you talk about some kind of a different situation, lasting or taking certain time, you can use this verb. To nějakou dobu potrvá. That will take some time. To nějakou dobu potrvá, než se to vyřeší. That will take some time before it gets solved. We could say that these are actually interchangeable. You could say to nějakou dobu bude trvat. It will be taking some time. To nějakou dobu potrvá also sounds like it will take some time, but you are using the perfective verb. We could practically say these are very, very similar by using a different type of tense for the future. I cannot imagine that we would use this one in the past. Potrvalo to might not be used as much. But you could use this verb. Počkal na mě v parku. He waited in the park. It was nice of him. Čekal na mě v parku. We are talking more about the circumstance. He was waiting for me at the park while I was getting something ready. Of course, prefixes have been here for a very long time. In the Czech language or in the Proto-Slavic language centuries and centuries before. Sometimes it is really difficult to find out what their function is and how they change the meaning of a verb such as moct. You know, moct by itself means can. Pomoc means to help. So they are not so related. You could think maybe, okay, when I can do something, I can also help. But it doesn't really help us understand why we would be using exactly this particular prefix. Don't worry about it, learn these verbs. So these verbs that I wrote here are perfective. Moc mi to pomohlo. It really helped me. Moc mi to pomohlo. Remember, if we wanted to use the imperfective version of this verb to help, to be helping, we would use this form, pomáhat, which also starts by po, and that would be imperfective. To be helping, you could say moc mi to pomáhá. This is helping me a lot. This helps me a lot. Potkat means to meet someone by a chance. Really, you're not planning on meeting them. Kind of like running into someone, but it's not an informal verb. Hádej, koho jsem potkal. Guess who I met? Hádej, koho jsem potkal. We could also have the imperfective form of this verb, to meet by chance, and that would be potkávat. Let's say you always meet a person every time you go to work. Vždycky ho potkávám ve vlaku. I always see him, like meet him on a train. I cross path with him. Poznat means to recognize, and it comes from the verb znát, to know someone or something. Poznat doesn't have that accent. It means to recognize. Poznat. Málem jsem tě nepoznal. I almost didn't recognize you. Málem jsem tě nepoznal. And of course, we also have the imperfective form, and that is poznávat. And also meeting someone for the first time. When you meet someone for the first time, you can say rád vás poznávám. It is nice to meet you. It's not a typical phrase that we would use, but we can use it instead of just the kind of cliché phrase těší mě. Rád vás poznávám, ráda vás poznávám. A nice informal phrase. Povědět. You can see that it comes from vědět, to know. And povědět has not much to do with to know. Povědět means to say or tell, but it is used quite formally. It's becoming a little archaic now. You could still use it in a sentence such as povíš mi to, will you tell me? Povíš mi to? But I would recommend you to replace it by the verb říct. Řekneš mi to? That's also perfective. And the imperfective version with the prefix po as well is povídat. Povídat, we spoke about it last time. Povídat si, to chat informally. And povídat also means to say or tell, but it's imperfective. You could tell someone povídej. That means tell me. When someone had an interesting day, something interesting happened, you can invite them to tell you all about it by saying povídej. Povídej, tell me all about it. This verb is used much more This is an alternative of říkat, but it's more friendly, like cozy, because you imagine that you have a lot of patience and you're gonna listen to what someone says, or you're gonna talk. Narrate, that's another meaning of this verb. To tell a story would be used specifically with this verb. Povídat pohádku. And this is all from me. Even though I try to simplify this topic and try to use only just a couple of verbs, it's difficult to just choose a few of them. You will find more verbs and more information in my extensive worksheet. You'll also be able to see all kinds of forms of verbs and whether they are perfective and imperfective. If you have been following my series focused on prefixes, you know that I have made more worksheets like this in the past. You'll find links to all the worksheets to other prefixes in the description below. So after you're done watching, check the description of the video and see if there is any link to a topic that you're interested in. To je ode mě všechno. Mějte se moc krásně. Ahoj!